Before I arrived in this world, my parents built a homestead cabin in the Mojave Desert. The desert became part of me before I was born. Maybe that's why it seems like a dream sometimes, like old Super 8 movies exist out of time. Hi, I'm Steve Brown. As a journalist, historian, and someone who wants to better understand the land I call home, I'm taking an incredible road trip to get to know the land, the beauty, and the people of the real deserts of the Southwest. I hope you'll join me on this epic quest. My first destination is the Oasis of Mara in 29 Palms, California, where people traveling the Mojave Desert have been welcomed for more than 9,000 years. An oasis is literally the wellspring of life in the desert, sustaining people, animal, and plant species that would never survive without its life-giving water. But an oasis does more than that. For many travelers, an oasis conjures up a romantic vision of an almost magical destination, a timeless refuge for the weary, resplendent in this arid land. The Oasis of Mara is certainly all that, but it has also helped give cultural life to the community that sprang up around it, 29 Palms. Well, we made it to the 29 Palms Inn. The inn's been here receiving visitors since 1928 on the Oasis of Mara. I'm going to go meet with Vicki Waite, who started the Sunrunner magazine back in January 1995 and got this whole thing rolling. Adventures, but
those are the good
you
days.
Started the magazine back January 1995.
1995,
and
yes.
Why in the world did you ever decide to do something like that?
Well, we needed a vehicle to get the arts news out into town.
Okay, arts news.
As I always say, people forget that we had an art scene going on here back in the 1940s. And then in the 1950s, when landscape artist John Hilton moved here, then he really got the town going. He was teaching art to all the locals, and one of his best buddies was James Cagney. He used to come out here.
I love the photo of James Cagney and Hilton, you know, doing their artwork together.
Oh, they went over at the art gallery. Mm-hmm. That is really famous. Well, John Hilton was co-founder of the 29 Palms Artists Guild here. And Cagney used to come out. They used to hang out here at the 29 Palms Inn, too, as a matter of fact, besides the gallery. Cagney used to tickle the ivories on the piano over there, you know?
All right.
Anyway, but there was a big art scene going on here then. They used to paint up in the monument, which is now Joshua Tree National Park, and they had a good scene. 3 decades later, 1994-95, our local merchants got together. We wanted to beautify downtown, try to attract some of the visitors, the 1.4 million visitors to the national park, down into 29 Palms. The newspaper that we have, the Desert Trail, since 1935, wonderful paper, but can only hold so much art news. Mm-hmm. So the editor of the paper and I talked, and I said, look, I know what we can do. I sat down with a little Apple Macintosh. It was like that big.
Yeah, with the 3-inch screens. Right. There's cell phones with screens bigger than that now.
And some grocery money. And that was about, you know, the beginning of the magazine. And I created the Sunrunner Arts and Entertainment magazine. Mm-hmm. So that we could promote the arts that were going on, all the murals that were just starting.
Action Council.
Action Council, right. And the murals, while they were being painted, there were wonderful stories going on. And so that we could cover all the artists and the people stopping by the murals, and then the mural unveilings, and then all these artists started moving to town. I mean, we commissioned world-class mural artists for these murals, right?
Absolutely.
But along the way, some of them decided to move here.
Chuck Kaplinger, for one. From what, Hollywood to 29 Palms?
He had a studio in Hollywood, right? Rode into town on a Harley. And we captured him.
And
he bought a place, and he's still here. Desert Art Studio, right?
A great guy.
Anyway, but our art scene continues to go on. We still have murals. We ended up with 24 murals in town, 21 of which are still alive and well.
Yes.
And then in 2006, the city of 29 Palms started a public arts advisory committee, and they've been placing sculptures in the community since then, including our iconic 29 exclamation point. It's on the highway as you enter downtown from the west, right? People are always stopping at that now, getting their photos taken. Art has played a really important role in 29 for a long time.
It has, and I mean, Hilton's one of the, not just a 29 Palms artist, but one of the leading desert landscape artists, and was famous actually for tossing his imperfect works in his eyes onto a bonfire once a year. Which is something that just gives me a heart attack. I want those, but they're ashes. John Hilton actually ties this area in with a lot of the rest of the desert. Down in the Anza Borrego area, he hung out with Harry Oliver.
And he was actually living in the Coachella Valley before he moved up here to 29.
Right. So I mean, it's all woven together. The arts, film.
Ed Ainsworth was the famous LA Times columnist, was a good friend of John Hilton too, and he covered the art scene in the Coachella Valley and up here.
Now, what do you think the desert does for the creative spirit? I mean, we've got artists, writers, musicians. We've almost got more of those than we do of cholla and creosote bushes.
The first thing that Terry said was, when we moved here, he says, the wide open spaces. And you can bounce your creativity off of heaven. It just comes back at you.
I love that.
Yeah, musicians find the same thing in composing. Now, as a writer, because when I moved here, I was a writer and a poet. That was my primary love. To me, it was crazy. All this beige sand, miles and miles, and it was almost too big for me. And it took a long time for me to find my voice in my writing, because it was like too big.
It is big, but it opens up your mind, I think, and your spirit as well.
And that was scary.
But yeah, it is sometimes. Don't want to go there, but sometimes I love the mountains off in the distance because that's an anchor point. You can still hold on without drifting off into space.
Wonderful.
So, Vicki, the Inn, how does it relate with the arts here locally? We've got James Hammond's work behind us.
Right. Well, now we have rotating art shows all over town.
Right.
We only have a few galleries, but we have a lot of venues, and a lot of restaurants and inns have this. The 29 Palms Inn now has bi-monthly shows run by the Morongo Basin Cultural Arts Council. It's very significant that we have art hanging in the dining room here because the very first art show in 1940 was held here at the 29 Palms Inn. The first known art show.
Well, and that's about the time that the Weed Show started as well. So another desert classic art show based here in 29 Palms.
About 75 years ago, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and that's homegrown and authentic.
And that's another story.
That's a whole story on itself, but it's something that you will not find anywhere else than the desert. Ken and I piled into the old Ford to take a drive around town to explore this oasis of murals. These aren't just really big, pretty pictures, though. 29's murals tell the story of the town, from the plants and animals who call this part of the Mojave home, to early life at the Oasis of Mara, homesteaders and prospectors. One of my favorites is called Desert Gold Mining Days, created by John Wytock and Terry Waite, where a two-dimensional mural becomes 3D as a miner pushes his ore cart out of the tunnel and out of the mural. The public art in 29 Palms inspires me to try my hand at making a little art of my own. Gretchen Grunt, an artist from the family that owns the 29 Palms Inn, runs the 29 Palms Creative Center. She has just the thing to satisfy everyone's creative urges, so we're going to try printmaking today. This is too much fun. I don't want to talk about Jack. I mean, oh, that's right. I'm working. I forgot. This is TV. So, Gretchen, you grew up here, right?
Yeah, I moved here when I was 6 years old.
What was it like living out here at the inn?
I loved it. It was...
What kind of crazy stuff did you do around the Oasis, man? That's what
lots of fort building.
Fort building?
Lots of fort building.
Fort Grunt?
Yes.
Yes, all right.
You know, back when I was a kid, the inn wasn't as popular, and so
but now
I had lots of free reign to make a mess.
Okay, but you grew up, and then it became popular. People started coming here to see you. and making art, right?
No, they came here to see the rocks and climb them.
Oh, okay.
The rock climbers is what put us on the map. Well, there's always been kind of a surge of artists coming here over the decades, and the latest, I would say, art movement started happening here in the desert. I would say in the 90s, early 90s when it started again. There were so many artists moving here that I was like, this is the place to be. Something's happening here. And the Creative Center was always my dream. And actually I had a premonition when I was about 9 or 10 years old, sitting right there against that wall. Don Malone was drawing a portrait of me, and I was sitting there, I'm like 10, and I just remember looking around this room going, someday I'm gonna do something in this room. And then my mom bought this property that's attached to the inn, and that's the rest is history, talking about my dream with her.
Well, I love it as the Creative Center. You've got printmaking, you paint, you do mixed media stuff as well. Then you've got stained glass, and what else do we have back here?
I have a pottery studio so people can come and play with clay.
The Creative Center hosts a variety of classes and private lessons for groups up to 25, turning desert inspiration into works of art. I'm having fun being creative here with Gretchen, but it's time to roll the printout and see if this boy's got any talent.
Come on over here and put your plate in that green square.
All right, I can do that. This is the part that I can pretty much do.
And I'll line up your paper because you probably can't do this part.
Probably
this
not.
Is the hard part.
No, that's.
So I'll do so.
All right. Ooh,
Put our
okay.
blankets down, and now you got to crank the wheel.
Nice little
spin it.
blankets.
This is like
Now, which
the big
way do
spin.
I crank?
Other way. Other way. Other way. I know you like the pirate ship sound.
I like the noise. The noise is
I know
good.
you'd like that. And we're going to sneak a peek and make sure we had enough pressure. Oh, I
think there's enough
so.
pressure, yeah.
Oh, see, I told you create a masterpiece.
Well, I'm not sure it's a
Look
masterpiece.
how gorgeous that is. Does it go that way or this way? It's a perfect composition. It goes anyway.
Yes. Personally, I think my artwork pales in comparison to the beauty of a desert oasis. But there's more to that beauty than meets the eye.
You can see the Pinto Mountain Fault, which
The Oasis of Mara has been a source of life in this part of the Mojave Desert for thousands of years. From the geology that forces water to the surface to the plant and animal life that thrives around the oasis, there's no better guide than desert naturalist Pat Flanagan.
like this. There's the oasis. You can see it from space. This is a pretty interesting spot. This is the last of the sag pond that formed about 9,000 years ago. And initially, when there was movement along the fault line, it was moving in such a way that it formed this material called fault gouge.
Okay.
And when fault gouge gets wet, it becomes like cement.
Okay.
And what you get is a dam. So you have the pressure ridge and you have the fault gouge. And then when the water is coming down off of Joshua Mountain, actually not so much on the surface as the underground, it gets to this point where all of a sudden it's released.
And it comes up here.
It comes up here. And we know by looking at the salt bushes that are growing that this was at one time a mile long and probably near half a mile wide. The palm trees are native Washingtonian fan palms. Their center of distribution is Baja California. And this is the most northwesterly grove. And it probably was brought here by one of three agents. Could have been brought here by birds, by coyotes, or Serrano Indians.
The Indians. Yeah.
But nobody knows.
But the Indians used to set fires to clean up the oasis.
They like to do that really well because you see the skirts on it, and you'll see other places. Those skirts are full of nutrient that as long as it's up there, it's not fertilizing the soil, producing really good fruit. Also, there's a palm boring beetle up there, and the palm boring beetle can kill the plant by eating up at the growing section and the meristem. So that would also control that somewhat.
Okay.
So the Indians would burn on a regular basis and they knew exactly what they were doing. If they weren't here to do it, nature does it because these are extremely flammable and those skirts lightning can strike them.
Yeah.
And probably take, a couple of minutes for that palm tree to go whoosh, but it doesn't kill it.
Which is a good thing because they take a long time to grow.
Within a couple of days, you're going to have new fronds coming out. The palm trees provide an excellent date, not something you'd buy in a roadside stand.
No, they're small and large seeds, right?
Large seeds, a little bit of fruit around the outside, very sweet, tastes just like dates. And then when you think about it, what other sources of sugar did the people living here have?
Probably not much.
Not much. You could get nectar from flowers, you could get aphid excretions.
Ah, yes, aphid poop. Sugary aphid
yes,
poop.
exactly.
It's a delicacy.
That was really good. Exactly good.
Desert delicacy.
Yeah. So there were these other things, but there was no sugar cane. There was no honeybees till the Spaniards arrived. So to have this as your resource is wonderful, and it stores well. These are the date seeds, and the pulp around them isn't that much more.
Right. They're really small.
They're really small. You can put that in your mouth, but you won't like it.
I'm not putting it in there. I am not putting this in my mouth, and I am not putting aphid poop in my mouth either, even though it's
really?
a desert
It's
delicacy.
delicious.
I'm sure it is.
You know, the problem with you is you're too squeamish. Did you see this little slope up here? Just this little slope.
There's a
That's
line
the
going
little
straight
pressure
down.
ridge that says you're on the fault line. Tell me what you see when you see the ground, Steve.
Well, it's not your typical desert sand.
That's correct.
It looks like a richer soil, actually.
It is. Well, how about pond bottom?
Pond bottom.
Remember that pond that was a mile long and about almost a half a mile wide?
Right along this fault line.
Exactly. So here's pond bottom.
Okay, so we've got lots of plant compost mixed in over thousands of years, basically.
That's right,
Okay.
exactly.
Aphid poop to sweeten your Mormon tea, mesquite beans to grind into flour, and sweet tiny dates that's food for birds and coyotes. An oasis provides for an incredible variety of life. Even life like the scruffy salt bush. It may not be beautiful to look at, but it draws beauty to it.
This is in the saltbush family. These are the females. They have little seeds in each one of these little tiny nodules. And this is what the birds eat.
Ah,
And
so
they
if you
love
would
it.
like to have birds in your yard, this would be
This
the
would be
plant.
one of those things. But when you look at this and you see that anyway, an oasis is a major magnet for all kinds of wildlife. This is just another one of the food sources.
So now, you had mentioned to me something about a second harvest.
Right.
Get rid of this before I might wind up with a handful of these things.
And this one, the seeds in here are fairly large. They also have a delicious, tangy fruit in there that you want to eat, the pulp.
It better be delicious because I've got all sorts of little
well,
things
the people
poking
who
in
lived
my
here were
hand.
smart enough not to let that happen. What the Indians would do, natives here, they would eat the whole thing, the fruit, and then they would actually go and
Wouldn't eat these
defecate
dang-
elsewhere.
Ah.
And they would spread it out, and the sun would dry it and actually sort of sterilize the seeds that were in there. And then what they would do is they would winnow it out, and then they could eat the seeds. These seeds are large enough, maybe they could eat these as well, but when they're really small, this allowed them to eat both the seeds and the pulp. Very clever. It's fascinating how so much life arises around the presence of water in the desert. Now I'm going to meet up with Jane Smith, whose family has run the 29 Palms Inn since 1928. As a kid, though, I mean, what did this do for your imagination, being out here? I mean,
Oh, well, there was a tremendous amount of freedom. I mean, you know, Mother would just say, get out of the house, go do whatever you want to do. And my dad also had a wonderful little tool shed that he had all of his tools in there that he hated when my sister and I got in there to make our little projects.
uh-oh.
And we were always scheming and doing things. But
The Oasis was a lot bigger back then, though, wasn't it?
yeah, the where the garden is now, where we have our vegetable garden, in the wintertime, that became a marsh.
Okay.
And when the water would come up, I guess it's because there wasn't as much evaporation in the winter, and you couldn't. I mean, you could walk through there, but you'd get. It was a marsh. It was.
And how about the ponds?
There would be
Was there
5
more?
ponds. There'd be 5
Okay.
ponds in the oasis, from here to the west.
Oh, okay, to
and,
the west.
And right on the fault line. I mean, you know, they were just kind of like lined up
Okay.
right on the fault line. And two of them were here year round. This one and another one that isn't there anymore, a spring. And then the other 3 would just kind of come up as it got cooler. And of course, it was always exciting in the winter checking the ponds to see if there was ice on them.
So should I go for a swim?
You could if you want. I mean, there's nothing in there that would hurt you. Crawdads don't bite
There's
real
crawdads?
hard. Yeah.
So we need to talk to Chef and see if we can't round up some crawdads and have us an Oasis mudbug boil, right?
I've been thinking about that for a long time. Are
Okay.
you in on that?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So Steve, do you know that the Native Americans had their gardens right where we have our
Right there?
Right there.
No, I did not
And
know
that's
that
actually why, you know, you look at the soil and you go, it's so different because it's an ancient lake bed.
Okay.
So
the soil is perfect for it.
Well, yeah, we compost and we add compost to it, and we keep it a very organic garden.
And do you water it with well water from the Oasis here?
We do. We have we use what we call drip irrigation. We have those little drip lines, and we grow year round. So we can grow in the wintertime. A lot of people from the east kind of are amazed that you know we have a year-round garden. We've got the eggplant, the okra, well, the basil does really well.
All the herbs.
Yeah, they do really well. And figs, the grapes, the
figs are delicious.
Yeah, and
the best asparagus I've ever had was when Paul and I just walked through the garden and snapped them off. And
that's
ate
when we
them.
don't get it in the kitchen. It all gets eaten in the
Right,
garden.
yeah.
That happens.
Well, I did not know that was the area that the Native Americans used to use to grow, things here. I knew they grew things. I knew the Serrano and the Chemehuevi had lived here, but I didn't know that was the area.
There's some old maps showing how their irrigation ditches went from the springs out into that area, and a letter or two listing what they were growing. Lots of melons and squashes and.
But now we're growing it, and we're going to take it to the restaurant here at the end.
Yeah, right. We obviously can't grow everything that we need for the restaurant here, but everything we grow here, we get to use in the restaurant.
You have great steaks, so I didn't see any herd of cattle out there.
No.
So, yeah.
But they've got some leeks growing.
Ooh,
I think they're
good.
using those in the with the fish dish tonight.
The fish, okay.
Yeah, and I think they're going to be doing a really nice pizza, and it's to die for. To die for.
On your menu this evening, the little mini pizza on the beginning side has caramelized onion, fresh figs from our garden, pancetta, and feta cheese. It's on our house-made thin crust. The pasta dish is a 4-cheese ravioli tossed with butter and garden herbs. Also has tomatoes and zucchini from our garden. All of our steaks are seasoned and char-grilled. The Hunter sauce with the filet mignon is a mushroom sauce. Our pork tenderloin this evening is char-grilled, served with a cornichon caper and black olive relish. And the catch of the day is a wild coho salmon, char-grilled, served with a butter sauce that has fresh leeks from our garden.
She even cooked me breakfast. She brought it to my bed. I sipped all the coffee, threw the cup at her head. Cause I'm evil. She's evil. Such an evil. Leave me back to me.
To the Oasis of Mara, the 29 Palms Inn, Paul and Jane Smith, and steak. There's nothing quite like nightfall at an inn on a real desert oasis, swapping stories and songs with friends old and new. But as the moon rises, I can hear the road calling, and come the dawn, it'll be time to move on deeper into the real desert.